It was 1982, and the greatest alien film ever was released. E.T. came out too. But while the less successful The Thing failed to impress at the time, as time passed, the John Carpenter gem would go on to be hailed by many horror fans as the greatest of all time. Agree or not, it's impossible not to enjoy watching this film. Right now though, enjoy Behind the Blood, The Thing. Before Bill Lancaster and John Carpenter settled on a screenplay, this was thrown around to many other filmmakers in Hollywood, including Tobe Hooper and Kim Henkel of Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame. For John Carpenter, who already established himself to horror fans as an awesome filmmaker, this was his first crack at a studio picture. Production designer John Lloyd was credited as really helping John Carpenter with the ins and the outs of the studio world, which by the end of it, really, John Carpenter never fully embraced. With that being said, John Carpenter originally wasn't against being in the studio world, but he didn't really like the fact that a remake of The Thing was his first dance in a studio. And in typical John Carpenter fashion, he rejected Universal's demands to have full creative control, leaving it up to him once again. While the film is set in Antarctica, the production of the film was half LA studio and half Stewart, BC to be exact. The location of Stewart, BC was very remote. We'll get more on that in a second. But they built the set in the summer, hoping that when the winter snow comes and it would all be weathered in, and it worked perfectly. Outpost 31 was built in the summer of 1981 with anticipation of production starting in December of 1981 after the snow had weathered the set. The town of Stewart, BC was chosen because it was the snowfall capital of North America. Temperatures ranged from 0 to about -15 degrees Fahrenheit while shooting The Thing, and some report that it was about $70,000 to $75,000 spent on just keeping cast and crew warm. And it was even worse for second unit filmmakers who shot above Juneau, Alaska. They were like staying in like scientific huts, and it was cold stuff. Cinematographer on this film was once again Dean Cundey, who teamed up with John Carpenter for a fourth time. Way before CGI, makeup and special effects on set were crucial. Enter Rob Bottin, who was 22 years old when he met John Carpenter on the set of The Fog and took the helm of The Thing. The film is steeped with awesome special effects, but it did come with a price. We'll get more on that in a second. The Thing boasts an all-male cast, which was a conscious decision by John Carpenter. He was really intrigued by the idea. Nowadays, yeah, right. One of the most badass characters in horror or in film history is MacReady, played by Kurt Russell. But he actually wasn't even up for the role. It was John Carpenter that was vigorously auditioning for that part when Kurt Russell kind of just stepped in at the last minute, and boom. Richard Masur, who played Clark in The Thing, actually lost out to having a role in E.T. because of his obligations to The Thing. So The Thing and E.T. just continuously do battle. Unfortunately for Clark, maybe he lost out on a bigger role, but at the same time, as The Thing progresses through time, he's more revered now than if he would ever be in E.T., right? The dog used in the movie was half wolf, with an emphasis on wolf. The cast and crew were advised to be very, very careful around this dog / wolf. John Carpenter wanted the relationships in this film to be very, very realistic. So he insisted that the studio provide him with 2 weeks of rehearsals for the cast. John Carpenter was a very loyal filmmaker to his cast and crew and wanted the same tight units from The Halloween and The Fog to be with him on The Thing. However, it was a studio production and they weren't union workers. John Carpenter worked to get them union status. Now that is a man you want to work for. Oddly enough, except for Kurt Russell, all the other casts were theater-based. Ennio Morricone's score was nominated for a Razzie, but like The Thing itself, over the years, his score has gone on to be revered by fans and viewed as a classic. And while it all worked out in the scoring world, Jerry Goldsmith, who won an Oscar for The Omen, actually passed on The Thing. Nick Nolte turned down the role of MacReady, as did Jeff Bridges. Bill Lancaster said that when he was writing the film, he was actually writing it for Clint Eastwood or Harrison Ford. All were considered for the role that eventually went to Kurt Russell. A relatively unknown Fred Ward was campaigning for the film, but of of course, never got it. Ernie Hudson and Carl Weathers were both considered for the role of Childs. Hudson actually almost claimed the role, but in the end, it went to Keith David, and I mean, who can argue with the results? The role of Cooper went to Richard Dysart, but apparently, Brian Dennehy was this close to landing the role. Lee Van Cleef, Jerry Orbach, Kevin Conway, Richard Mulligan, and Powers Booth were all considered for the role of Gary before Donald Moffat was selected. Richard Mulligan actually really campaigned for the role because it was a departure from his ordinary sitcom comedy stuff, and he also was up for the role of Palmer, which he received neither role. Powers Booth was considered for a brief time when they were thinking of having Gary's age comparable to MacReady's, but in the end they wanted Gary to be older, and that's what they got. Before becoming a big star, Alec Baldwin actually claimed that he auditioned for many roles in The Thing. Friggin' Pete Schweddy, man. Jay Leno and Gary Shandling apparently auditioned for the role because back in the day, the studio wanted to take an up-and-coming stand-up comedian and make him into a big star or a potential star. In the end, T.K. Carter ended up playing Knowles. Jay Leno. While being a studio production, it still didn't have a balls-out budget, so matte paintings were used primarily for finding the UFO in the Antarctic ice. Despite being the quintessential winter film, the interiors of the film were shot on the soundstage in Universal Studios in the summer, and lots of the cast and crew would get sick between going from the frozen sets to the heat outside the studio. And poor Rob Bottin, he was so far behind in his effects that a lot of the effects stuff was shot after the cast had wrapped. Stan Winston, a special effects master in his own right, was brought in to alleviate some of the workload for Rob Bottin. His masterwork could be seen in the dog transformation. And while on set, John Carpenter and Rob Bottin butted heads constantly. John Carpenter, after, really attributes the success of The Thing to Rob Bottin's brilliance in the makeup and special effects. While shooting on a glacier does sound fun, it actually posed a lot of problems. The extreme cold froze cameras, halting production several times. Buses carrying the cast and crew to and from set almost crashed, one time near fatally for everybody on board. Many attribute Kurt Russell as actually being like MacReady in that scenario and saved the day from having the bus fall off a cliff. Given the scenario and given the 2 weeks rehearsal of John Carpenter, the camaraderie between the cast was solid. Apparently there was a scene shot where MacReady not only survives, but he actually checks his blood work and he's clean. However, the more ominous ending I think worked a lot better. As I referred to earlier with the extreme heat in Los Angeles and the soundstage was actually refrigerated, keeping it real. Keith David actually broke his left hand just prior to production starting on The Thing. He hid it from the filmmakers because he didn't want to lose the role, and if you actually look in the first half of the film, his left hand is missing from a lot of the shots. With the amazing ambience of The Thing, along with a strong character development and the over-the-top awesome special effects, John Carpenter attributes the blood testing scene as the heart and soul of The Thing. While on location in Stewart, BC, the cast and crew were put up in a small little mining town, and they actually booked up all the hotel rooms, drawing a little bit of heat from the locals. It was about a 45 to 90 minute drive to the set, depending on the weather conditions, and again, it was treacherous sledding for the buses. Sometimes it's the little things that separate a good filmmaker from a great filmmaker. John Carpenter realized when watching dailies that a lot of the scenes were inside and having the characters just talking to each other in a comfortable environment. So he thought, let's move them outside. So there would be a lot more exterior shots, which would make the production a little bit trickier to shoot and a little bit more money down the tube. However, it would emphasize the drama in the picture. Like all good horror films, you kind of play around with the death scenes. Fuchs was originally supposed to get stabbed in the chest with a shovel. Bennings was supposed to get gobbled up on a snowmobile by the alien and pulled through the ice. Another way he was going to die was strangled and stabbed by a screwdriver, which is just not in an alien MO. The final Blair / The Thing was a mixture of special effects and stop motion. However, the stop motion really didn't play off very well, came out very choppy. That being said, you could still see a lot of that stop motion on various Blu-rays and DVD releases of The Thing. And there's a lot of them. For the stop motion, a miniature replica set was built, which was pretty cool. It was around 1.5 inches to a foot. John Carpenter said that one of the bush pilots used in the film offered to crash one of the choppers for money. Them crazy bush pilots. In the scene where MacReady and Doc head over to the Norwegian camp, one of the pilots actually handed over the controls to Kurt Russell while it was taking off. And if you notice, you actually see in the film, the chopper's a little bit shaky. The fate of Knowles was never really actually shown on screen nor really discussed. One of the most popular opinions is that his character was assimilated by the Blair thing and died. The miniature UFO used in The Thing in 1982 was built by model maker Susan Turner. The quiz show Palmer was watching in his bedroom was Let's Make a Deal, hosted by Monty Hall. The porno? I have no idea. The Thing officially shot for 40 days on a soundstage and 17 days on location in BC. The words spoken by the Norwegian as he infiltrates the camp at the beginning of the film are actually understandable by Norwegians, albeit broken Norwegian. The line he delivers is, "Get the hell out of there! That's not a dog! It's some sort of thing! It's imitating a dog! It isn't real! Get away, you idiots!" Kind of sounds like Thanksgiving at my house. For the scene when Dr. Cooper's arms were severed, an amputee was actually brought in, and a prosthetic of Dr. Cooper's face was put on him. The logic was people would be looking at the action and not really noticing the fake face. But you will now. An eye light was used to create a gleam in every actor in the blood test scene, except for Palmer, who was the Thing. This was a Dean Cundey idea. A brilliant, subtle touch. The Thing opened to mixed reviews not only from critics, but from audiences that would probably go on to love the film. It has been mentioned numerous times that one of the things that hurt The Thing's success was the release of E.T. just about a month before, and the world was more into a friendly, happy alien than one that's gonna rip you apart. What did the world know? John Carpenter noted that it was the most challenging film that he had ever made, but maintains that it is the strongest film he ever made. Kurt Russell also agrees that that was John Carpenter's shining moment as a filmmaker. One of the most fiercely debated topics in the horror film world is the ending of The Thing. Was MacReady human? Was he an alien? Was Childs human? Was he an alien? Were they both aliens? Were they both human? No one really knows. One of the most valid arguments out there is MacReady has breath showing in the cold Antarctic air and Childs has none. However, that is quickly dispelled by the fact that maybe Childs is too close to the fire, therefore you don't see it. It is an awesome topic. There's a lot of message boards out there, there's a lot of debate out there, and there's really no clear answer. Even John Carpenter at times contradicts himself with the ending of Childs and the breath. Antarctica at any one time would only have darkness or daylight and not a mix as portrayed in the film. Bottin worked 7 days a week for a year on the film before being hospitalized for his efforts in The Thing. So it's kind of good that John Carpenter made peace with him. Hyder, Alaska is next to Stewart, just to show how far north they went. There is a character named Mac and another named Windows in the film. In 1982, this was purely coincidental as both Mac and Windows weren't around. The female voice on MacReady's computer was performed and uncredited by then-wife of John Carpenter, Adrienne Barbeau. In 1982, before its released, Fangoria magazine had a contest, Draw the Thing, to see if anyone could guess what it was going to look like. The winner won a trip to Universal Studios. When the film first aired on USA Network Television, Universal executive Sid Steinberg provided a completely different cut of the movie, which included early scenes introducing each character. Naturally, the version was disowned by John Carpenter, but can be seen on the 2016 Scream Factory Blu-ray release.
Windows. Hates being a radio operator. Hates being here. Can't wait to get back to the States.
There's much debate about Blair's computer analysis. There is much debate on whether people need lives. Each man's job on US Outpost 31 is as follows. Gary, a station manager. MacReady, helicopter pilot. Blair, biologist. Fuchs, assistant biologist. Bennings, meteorologist. Norris, geologist. Cooper, physician. Clark, dog handler. Childs, chief mechanic. Palmer, assistant mechanic and helicopter pilot in training. Windows, radio operator, and Knowles, the cook. In Germany, The Thing is Das Ding. One of the debates in the film is who actually got to the blood. Well, The Thing used its shape-shifting ability to reach up through the underside of the door into the fridge and slice open the bags of blood without ever needing to actually unlock the door to get the job done. Norris has a heart attack while being an alien. which kind of means that aliens inherit your problems too. So sucks to be an alien if you come into this head, let me tell you. According to the calculations, it would take 3.0822 years for worldwide infection. The thing's domesticated gross was $13,782,838. It was released on June 25th, 1982. Has a runtime of 1 hour, 49 minutes. The production budget was $15 million, and it has an MPAA rating of R. Are you brave enough to venture off and visit the locations of the thing? Well, if you are, here you go. The cast and crew accommodations were at 405 5th Avenue, Stewart, BC. Outpost 31 set was on the Salmon Glacier. And on this picture, you can see numerous locations. Picture courtesy of Tom Cameron and Steve Crawford. Outpost 31, you can see the fuel dump, Max Shack, the tool shed, and the main building area highlighted beautifully. And of course, Stage 27, Universal Studios at 100 Universal City Plaza. Apparently visiting the glacier in the winter is a pretty tough task, so I wouldn't advise it. Well, that's all for the Thing episode of Behind the Blood. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to comment below. Remember to subscribe to us, hit the notifications tab, follow us weekly. We always have new content for you. And remember, we're on Instagram and other social medias. Have fun with us and we'll have fun with you. Take care.